Hi, I'm Tyler, and this is the Fox Valley Film Critics. In this episode of the show, we're going to be discussing the next in the lineup of the AFI's Top 100 American Films, Jaws, as well as the newest DC Comics movie, Shazam. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the show, brought to you by Groupthink Productions and FVTV. Joining us is longtime return guest, Tom. It's been a while.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Or Thomas, I should say.
Thomas, yes.
I'm so used to calling you Tom, I need to break that habit.
It's okay. A lot of people do it, and it's annoying, but it's all right.
The comment section is just going to be nothing but Tom. Anyway, so let's talk about Jaws. What are your thoughts on Jaws? What is there to say about Jaws at the moment?
A lot. They really help you talk.
Oh, that's terrible.
Jaws is I love sharks. I've always loved the movie. I meant to sit down and watch it last night, but couldn't for unforeseen circumstances. But I really enjoy. I don't really know how to. I really enjoy how much it's really impacted culture. Literally everyone knows the Jaws theme. It is parodied and spoofed and put into so many things. It's basically your titular sound, and for someone who really enjoys music and soundtracks, it's a big thing for me. But I also really like sharks, and I really like how they do the power of a shark justice in that movie. It's amazing.
I've heard some people say this is like mild anti-shark propaganda, but I mean, I know there are people who are like super on like the sharks are the coolest animal train, and they don't like when people just treat sharks as like monsters that just go around biting people for no reason.
Right.
So I could see people being like, this movie gives you an irrational fear of sharks, which is slightly wrong, but it's also a movie, so.
I mean, most people inherently have a fear of sharks just because they're big creatures with big teeth.
Yes.
And they can breathe underwater and you can't. So like that's fair. But sharks are, you know, I've been up close and personal with sharks a couple times, and they're not that bad. You know, it's different. It's not Jaws. It's different. You know, that's a gigantic great white shark. That'll scare anyone.
Yes.
But like, you know, you get up close and personal with some sharks, you know, they're not terrible. You know, they'll bite you if you antagonize them, but they're just trying to live. Just like if I just came up to you and just kept annoying you and antagonizing you, you probably wouldn't bite me, but you'd give me some sign of go away.
Yeah, I imagine like anything else, they're probably if you just stared at one one-on-one, it'd probably just look at you and walk and float away just because it doesn't want anything to do with you. So
yeah, especially if you're not moving. You know, they go off of electronic impulse, kind of like radar, and they basically, if you're not moving, they don't really care.
okay, we've addressed the animal rights elephant in the room. So this movie is kind of the quintessential like started Spielberg's career in a big way after Duel, and it kind of set him on the path of being like the biggest blockbuster director right after Lucas had just taken that title. And right after this, we got Close Encounters and E.T. and Raiders, and he just took this and ran with it, which is kind of spectacular. I mean, I don't know if it holds up as well as some of his other movies do, but I think it definitely holds that place of being the movie that shocked people into liking Spielberg. Yeah. I mean, some of the acting is a little wooden compared to his later movies when he started getting better actors. But yeah. That's really my only complaint. It's just that some of the elements are clearly things that came about of having a relatively low budget.
Right.
I mean, the movie is famous for the production difficulty that they couldn't get the shark to work all that often. So they had to just focus on the actual story of this little town that has to deal with the repercussions of a shark floating out in the water. And,
Right.
And that's where really what ends up being the most interesting part. It's just the human drama of just being a little town that struggles from having to rely on an outsourced economy of tourists.
Yeah.
And now the one source of your town's money is in danger because there's a giant 80-foot, 20-foot, whatever size shark out there that's going to start consuming your tourists.
Yeah.
And it just creates a really good core of human drama, which is good because when you don't have a shark for your shark movie, you really have to rely on something else.
Right. And yeah, the acting was kind of a little bit subpar, but a lot of that, like even for that time, acting was just done differently back then. So you can take any movie from that era, from late 70s through the early 90s, and you'll see the acting is much different than it is in a movie made today. Just the weight of acting is very different. But it really did launch Spielberg's career really well. In a weird way, I've always been someone who's very, very, very much respected Spielberg, but I've never been that huge of a fan of his. And I mean that with all respect. I mean, he's amazing. But there are always those movies that like you always fall back on and respect as being some of the greats of all time, but it's not really the movie you choose to sit down and watch at any point in time.
I don't think Spielberg really hits his God mode run until he gets to between Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan, when he starts really kind of hitting the ground running.
And both of those are movies I can't just sit down and watch because they're gonna make you cry, and you just I don't feel like crying right now.
They also got Jurassic Park in there somewhere too.
Yeah,
so.
And those are Jurassic Park for me is one of the movies I'm more inclined to go sit down and watch. But Jaws is always a good one, especially if you just kind of want a taste of throwback and what good movies were like, back in honestly a simpler time of movie making. It's so good. It's so good.
Just the look in your eyes. It's just.
I love it. It's a great movie. It again, for being as low budget as it was, and it wasn't incredibly low budget, but it was low budget for a
mid-tier budget, really. Well,
yeah.
I mean, it's big enough that you can afford a giant mechanical shark, but poor enough that you can't make it work. So
yeah, you just can't afford one that works all the time. But like it's not all that low budget, but knowing the success of it, you ask anyone right now if they know the movie Jaws, even if they've not seen it, they know it.
Yeah.
And people who've never seen this movie, yeah, I know what that is. It's about the shark.
Yeah.
Dun 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 dun. Everyone knows. That's got to say something. About how good a movie is, that it can stand that test of time. That people who've never seen it know about it.
I just watched Airplane about 2 weeks ago, and the entire opening of that film is just spoofing it.
It's so good. I love it. I love it. Oh yeah, the man climbing up and just beating the shark. It's good. Since watching that, I can't watch Jaws the same way. I watch it, and a part of me kind of chuckles at that scene when Quint is getting eaten by the shark on the boat.
Did you ever watch any of the Jaws sequels?
I've seen Jaws 2, but not Jaws 3.
Okay, I've never watched them just because they conceptually they sound terrible. Like I just know they sold Jaws 3 as Jaws 3D.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, these are just gimmick movies with sharks in them. Like,
it was like Sharknado, which, again, I love sharks.
Or The Meg, which.
I love sharks.
Did you watch The Meg?
I did.
We reviewed The Meg on the show. I don't remember what I said about it because I don't remember The Meg that much. So.
That's fair. But like, I have an affinity for sharks. I don't really know why. I think they're cool. It might have to do with a 90s cartoon. Street Sharks. Great cartoon. It was not that great, but I loved it.
That's more accurate.
Yeah. But, again, it's a movie that like you can't deny. You can't deny that it's obviously one of the top 100 movies of all time.
Yeah. I mean, obviously a lot of it comes down to shock value and it being like the way it was kind of sold to the public as like the first blockbuster, or it just became the first blockbuster, really.
Yeah, it wasn't even marketed that way. Just that's what it was.
It's like probably the first time that happened since Psycho. Was
Which-
this before or after Star Wars? Like, it was in the same vicinity, but
It would have been before Star Wars.
76.
Yeah, Star Wars was 77, 79, and 81.
Yeah, so that would have because that really explains that first rush of blockbusters, just as you go
Yeah.
straight into the 80s.
Yeah, and I mean, that changed movie making forever.
For good and ill. I mean, I know a lot of film critics despise the 80s as a decade, so.
A lot of people despise the 80s as a decade. It's just, I wasn't alive for them.
Are you telling me Stranger Things lied to me that it wasn't just one little 10-year-olds playing Dungeons and Dragons in peace?
No. There was a lot of Motley Crue and cocaine.
That's all the time we have for this segment. Join us for the following segment. We'll be discussing Shazam. Stay tuned. From the blockbuster cinema of the 1970s, we now move to the blockbuster cinema of the current day with the newest DC Comics adaptation of Shazam. So, we have our resident DC Comics expert on hand. What do you think of Shazam? The tension is building.
Shazam, as you might know, is my favorite superhero of all time. My list is Shazam, Aquaman, Green Lantern. Batman doesn't count, he's a vigilante. Huge fan. Shazam as a movie is a little bit different. Personally, I loved it. There are always things within comic book movies that you just have to deal with and accept, that they're going to pull things from different story arcs and different universes, and they're going to conglomerate them into one movie. And that always upsets you. That's not how you do that. But they have creative license, they're allowed to do that. I think the movie was really good. It was really a good way for DC to get off of the gloom and doom train, which realistically is what DC really built itself on in their movies. And taking a step away from that, really letting, honestly, Shazam's character shine, being more of a comic.
It definitely has like a mid-tier 90s blockbuster feel, like Big is
Yeah.
Big. They reference Big a lot in the movie, which is obviously because of the plot. But
Yeah, and I love that movie too. I absolutely love Big.
I'm curious, what are your thoughts generally on the post-Justice League DC in movies? Because I know you actually really like Justice League, and you liked a lot of the previous ones too. So
Yes. The post-Justice League movies are interesting, because before then, DC was just kind of doing its own thing, especially when you had like The Dark Knight, which stands alone as its own entity. Those movies were untouchable. They were amazing movies. But then when they tried to build a larger universe, as Marvel did, and Marvel did it fantastically, marvelously, one might say, DC didn't do as good of a job doing that, which is, it breaks my heart as a admitted DC fanboy. Absolutely breaks my heart. But it's okay, because then everyone would just be like, well, they're ripping off Marvel. You want them to do their own thing. So I have a weird relationship with them. I do love those movies. Post-Justice League movies, Aquaman was amazing. There were some issues with it, but I personally loved the movie. Shazam met one of my expectations in a very surprising way, yet unsurprising. I was hoping they wouldn't bring in the titular villain for Shazam in the first movie. Because then after you do that, like what else do you do? So it looks to me like they can actually make something out of this. They brought in the whole Shazam family at the end, spoilers, which made me upset. But it worked with the plot very well. A lot of the post DC movies, that you kind of see this shift where DC's not as much gloom and doom really at all, and they shift to being a little bit more comedic. There's still a huge sense of conflict within the movie, and obviously you have your major plot, but throughout there's always jokes and references being made to other things, and especially with Shazam being, well, it's 14-year-old Billy Batson, like all he knows, is 14-year-old stuff. So that's what he knows. I do think they did the character of Shazam a disservice by not being the character of Shazam, but that's something that the character can grow into. So it's a good entry into it.
Yeah, I'm curious as to what this actually means for the course of the DC movies, because I'm looking at them right now and I don't see them actually building towards anything at the moment in terms of where they're building these stories. And part of it's just because they won't commit to a slate again for them at the moment. So
committing to a slate did not do them justice.
Well, they committed to a bad slate. It was a 5-year plan, and there were going to be like 6 origin movies, half of them which were coming out after Justice League.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I mean, I'd be down for another try at Green Lantern, which would be fine, but I need to put some actual time and effort into it. And I would like if they were actually building up to another event movie, because then they could actually like spin these story arcs into something. And it doesn't look like they can get Henry Cavill anymore because he's going to be working on Witcher for the time being. So
yeah, which is amazing, by the way. But I'm not opposed to someone else playing Superman. I'm not opposed to them leaving Superman out entirely.
Well, they just lost Batman too, so
yeah, this kind of they've lost 2 of their the top 3, but it does put it in a sense where you can actually have a real Justice League instead of just Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and the others. The Justice League itself, if you read the comics or if you watched even the Justice League television show, cartoon of the early 2000s, there's a whole lot of people in there. And up until recently, the only character that was in every single iteration of the Justice League was the Martian Manhunter. It's the only one in all of them, and they've never even put him on the screen whatsoever.
I know David Goyer was very specifically against adding Martian Manhunter to the DC universe. So,
which hurts me so much because he's so cool. But I think it's really interesting, knowing that they don't really have a direction in which they're going. We'll see how it works out. I very much feel that. A lot of the plans and things I've had in my personal life, they didn't work out. So I'm like, well, we'll do this and this and see what happens. And it's been okay so far. I'm still here.
I mean, I kind of appreciate that this and Aquaman feel like totally like complete films in and of themselves. Where I appreciate when films are films. Like you can go into it, you watch it, and you're done by the end of it.
Right.
And Aquaman, it can just be Dude Bro Lord of the Rings, and Shazam can be ironic 90s comic book movie with big inspiration, like or Goonies, or that kind of lighthearted 80s tone or something like that. Like, I think that's a smart move for the DCU, because one thing you can say about this, it does not feel like a Marvel movie. It doesn't just feel like it's not generic, it's not like formulaic. These characters feel like characters you wouldn't see in a Marvel movie.
Right.
Like, very offbeat, much more fully formed in a way. Because obviously I think these movies are like, there's a fear that this might be the last chance you could get a movie, and even though they're adding like after credit scenes to to see if they can get interest.
Yeah,
So far, it's like, I mean, Justice League teased like bringing in the Legion of Doom, which is like, that could be an interesting movie, but it's contingent on them making another Justice League movie, which they just lost 2 of their lead actors. So
right, and I really did like Justice League, but ironically, the things I liked the most about Justice League were not the big 3. I liked The Flash and Aquaman. They were the best of it for me. Cyborg was
Which I think they're probably not going to do the Cyborg movie now. So
yeah.
At the moment, the only ones I know that are in production are the Suicide Squad with James Gunn and Wonder Woman 84 with the crew that made the first Wonder Woman movie, which could end up being better or could end up being worse. I really don't know, because I don't know what the secret ingredient made that first one work was. So
yeah, I mean, that was a good movie. Shazam. I really hope that they do make more Shazam movies because they can fully flesh out the character and he's not just this weirdo. Because Shazam, I highly suggest everyone look up Shazam and realize how immensely powerful this guy is.
You always brag he can beat up my man Superman, so.
Without issue.
Well, it's because he's weak to magic, which I've
seen
that. Well, Shazam's also extremely powerful, so.
If you go into a couple, Shazam actually stands for something. Shazam, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, and Mercury. And he has the powers of each of those. And I do like that they reference that in the movie. I think that's really cool. Because anyone who has an understanding of mythology immediately, whoa, this dude's about to be really powerful. And it's more so than you think. Even a quick look into Wikipedia will show you the dude's unlimited in power.
Tangent aside, Shazam is very, very good. I think we both liked it. That's all the time we have for this segment. Join us for the final segment, where we'll be going into the movie recommendation for the week. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome back. Time for the final segment where we'll be getting Tom's movie recommendation for this week. Thomas, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's actually kind of like when you're actually Captain Marvel, but you're called Shazam for other reasons. I know how that feels.
Because of 50 years of copyright law.
So my movie recommendation is The Illusionist, 2006 movie with Edward Norton, Paul Giamatti, and Jessica Biel, directed and written by Neil Burger. Great movie. I love magic, and it's a movie about turn of the century Vienna. A magician in there grows up, a peasant, falls in love with this girl who's a duchess, studies magic. He's the son of a cabinet maker, studies magic, travels the world, finds her again later on in life. It's really cool because part of it pays homage to a real event, the Maryland incident, in which there was a murder-suicide. But it's done in a fictional way, but it's a very cool way. I don't want to give away too much of the movie because any movie with magic, as anyone with magic knows, you don't reveal the secrets. But it's a really, really good movie. Again, I love magic, so I think one of the last times I was on, I probably recommended The Prestige.
I was about to say that.
Because I love magic, and Shazam has magic powers. What fitting.
Theme.
I found it, but it's really, really a nice watch. It was made in 2006, and it kind of still stands the test of time a little bit. A little bit doesn't because so much has changed, but it's a really, really good watch.
Okay, I actually have not heard of this movie, and I was gonna say it sounds like The Prestige until you already brought it up. So
it is not The Prestige.
That's like the most underrated Christopher Nolan movie. So
it's a really good one though.
Oh yeah, exactly. That was right before he went into Dark Knight. So
yeah.
Did you? I was going to say, have you seen Dunkirk? But yeah, you've seen Dunkirk.
Yes, I have.
You are the fan. You are the Nolan fan, so.
Well, that's not. I'm a history fan.
Well, yeah, but you also love all the Nolan movies, as far as I can tell. So.
Almost all of them I've seen. Yeah.
Have you seen Following?
Yes.
If you've seen Following, you are a Nolan fanboy, and I should know. I own a copy of Following. So.
I had to dig for it, but I got it.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of the show. Thanks again for coming on. It's
Not a problem.
I don't remember when was the last time I had you on. What was it?
About a year ago.
Okay, about a year. If you want to find past recordings of the show, you can do so on the Groupthink Productions YouTube page. You can follow me on Twitter at antisocialcriti, that's critical with a C at the end of it. And you can find written reviews at Geeks Under Grace and Legal Insurrection. I'm Tyler with the Fox Valley Film Critics. Have a wonderful day.